Okay, today we pick up with Islam spreads and divides. Today we're going to be looking at the Caliphate. And the Caliphate is based on the Caliph, and a Caliph is a leader or a successor who takes over after Muhammad dies. So we're looking at the Islamic religion and after Muhammad dies. The first Caliph is a man named Abu Bakr, and he had actually been voted into the job. When he dies, the second caliph is a man named Umar, and he also is voted into the position. So the people had faith in them. The third man who is caliph is Uthman. And under Uthman, we will see the Quran will be published, so it's going to be available to more people. But he also is kind of seen as sort of a cruel person because he kind of gives jobs to family members and ignores whether someone is actually qualified for a job and can do it or anything along that line. The fourth caliph is a man named Ali, and there's some questions on whether or not he was actually a legitimate caliph because there's some speculation that maybe he was the guy who had Uthman assassinated so that he could get his job. But the Caliph Ali was Muhammad's son-in-law, so he's related to Muhammad, and so he felt that he had more right to the job than anyone else. So it's going to lead to this huge civil war among Muslims, and you will have Caliph Ali versus Muawiyah, who is Uthman's cousin, and he refused to recognize Ali as Caliph, and he is going to arrange for the assassination of Ali. So all kinds of people getting killed left and right. Well, this is going to lead to a division of the Ummah. And if you remember, the Ummah is the community, the religious community of Muslims. And so this is going to lead to a division between the supporters of Ali and the supporters of Uthman. And it's all based on theology of how they view the religion. And what it basically comes down to is the Quran and the Sunnah. The Sunnah, remember, were Muhammad's sayings. And these are things that are taken as Islamic authority on how you should live your life, what you should do, your religious and moral duties. And there's the debate, what's going to lead to the division is who interprets the Quran, who interprets the Sunnah, who says what way is the right way. And so that is how we're going to get the division of the Sunni and the Shiite Muslims. Now, the Sunni believe that the caliph should be chosen by the leaders of the Muslim community, that they were leaders, but they were not religious authorities. And so instead, you had people called the ulema, who are a group of religious scholars, and that's who you go to. And so it's the ulema who interpret the faith. The Shiites believe that the caliph should be a descendant of Muhammad, somebody related to Muhammad, because then they would be divinely inspired. God spoke to Muhammad, so of course God would speak to Muhammad's family as well, or at least influence them. And so they believe that the leader of the community should be an imam. And an imam is the leader of the community in prayer. They are the ones who interpret the faith. Today, 90% of Muslims are Sunni Muslims. The other 10% are Shiites. But there is a third tradition that has evolved as well, and it's called Sufism, or the Sufi Muslim. And they are going to seek communion through meditation, through fasting, through prayer. They really honestly don't think anybody should interpret the faith but yourself, that only you can interpret the Quran for yourself, only you can interpret the Sunnah for yourself. So that is how Muslim kind of divides, and we're going to see how that splits them up. They're not as strong of religion as a result. So Muslims in India. After the fall of the Gupta dynasty, India is going to fragment into a lot of little tiny kingdoms. And as a result, the Arabs are going to come in, and they're the ones who bring Islam to India. They conquer the Indus Valley. They really don't go any further south than that. They kind of stay around the Indus River. And Delhi is going to be made their new capital. But that's how we get the introduction of Muslim ways of government. They bring the Muslim learning with them into India. And so that's how the Islamic faith gets interpreted and brought into India. And so this is where where it's kind of interesting because we see how these two cultures mix and meld together. Very different religions. The Hindu religion, which was the predominant religion of India, has many sacred texts. It's polytheistic. They believe in the caste system. They celebrate a lot of their holidays with music and dance. And then you had the Muslims, who have one single sacred text, the Quran. They are monotheistic. They only believe in one God. They think that all believers are equal, so they don't like this caste system at all. And music and dance are not allowed in celebration of religious activities. So very, very different and diverse religious beliefs coming together in India. But they are very successful. They get along very well at first. Some of the reasons for their success: number one, there's a lot of religious fervor and loyalty. Basically, Hindus were Hindus, Muslims were Muslims. They weren't trying to convert each other. And so there was no real missionary obligation that you weren't trying to convert the other side to. So it allowed for religion, and it didn't interfere with your personal growth. It didn't interfere with your identity, all that kind of stuff. The second is an economic reason, that there was no need for them to fight each other, especially in the Deccan Plateau where it's underpopulated. Trade is going to extend the Muslim faith into India, but faith is also going to extend the trade as well, because Muslims would trade with other Muslims and Hindus would trade with other Hindus. So they traveled to find those contacts. The third is a political reason. Basically, there's a lot of division in the Muslim faith. You have the Shiites and the Sunnis and the Sufis, but there's also a lot of religious freedom and protection, because Hindus, remember, accept everything. They think everything is a part of their religion. So they're much more open to the acceptance of Muslims in their community. In terms of military, the Muslims bring a lot of organization and leadership to the military. You never get the sense that it's the House of Islam versus them, us versus them kind of thing. They don't really ever have that mentality. They're not interested in converting. They're not interested in dominating. They're allowed to coexist. And then you also have this concept of the Christians and the Jews, and because there were Christians and Jews as well in India. So the Muslims at this time viewed the Christians and Jews much more tolerantly than they do today, because Christians and Jews were also monotheistic. We share the same God, the same founders. The Quran tells Muslims that Christians and Jews are people of the book and that they should be protected people. They're dhimmis, they're protected people. And so they will allow Christians and Jews full participation in daily life. They do have some heavier taxes, and they're not allowed into government jobs, or high government jobs, I should say. And unfortunately, it's going to be the Christians more so than the Muslims who start kind of a blood feud. And the Christians will be the ones who see Muslims as infidels, and the Christians, when they conquer, tend to want them to either convert to Christianity or die. And so the Europeans eventually are going to expel the Jews and blame them for Jesus' death. And so a lot of the Jews go to Muslim communities because the Muslims are like, yeah, you can come here. So in older times, in years gone by, they actually get along much better than they do so today. But like I said, it's a lot of the reason that they don't get along is because of the Christian need to convert people. The Muslims don't have that compelling need the way that the Christians do, and so they're the cause of the conflict. They're the ones that kind of bring it to a head, and that's why there's such religious conflict today.